They did 100 years ago.
Yeah.
They did 100 years ago.
No, or Auduboozer did.
Yeah.
Weird.
There's probably more fish in there than there isn't.
I went to church one day when I
Well
was in
fed.
Carolina. It was very humid and they didn't have air conditioning. And the priest got us
I
in
don't
and
see
out
nothing
in
on there. That's why I asked what all your buddies were doing there.
communion and had a homily
How
and
many of these tentative agreements do I have to have here?
it was fast.
I don't know.
It's in Boston. Nobody could understand them anyway, so it didn't matter.
Sooner we get started, the sooner we
Progress
can
ought
leave.
to be in here.
Well, you could put a little something in there. Never know the difference. Well,
My God, I'm gonna get
pass
hot.
it around. We'll see how we.
It's so warm in here. And this is a wool. Sorry. This underneath, you can ignore it for a while, okay? Flip it over if I need to.
Close. It's close.
According to the clock on the wall.
Did you? Okay. This is the only one. Oh, this one. All right, let's call the meeting to order. Mel will do roll call. Thanks, Mel.
Sure. Mrs. Krantz. Mr. Heisey.
Here.
Mr. Tim.
Here.
Mr. Cap.
Here.
Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mr. Weddy.
Here.
Mrs. Collada. Here. Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Wadel.
Here.
Mr. Rothermel.
Here.
Mark Kirschner.
Here.
All present.
All right, thank you. Let's stand for silent prayer and pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
I so move.
I will second that.
Motion by Dennis, second by Bob Waito.
I have some discussion.
All right.
We are going to approve a Wisconsin Professional Police Association contract,
Yes.
and we're doing that with the words administrator in that, and we have not created an administrator yet. We won't do that until tonight on, resolution 32-12-16.
Right, but last month, you agreed to the concept of creating an administrator, so in order to help prepare for the contract for the next 2 years, that doesn't start until January, that word was changed in the negotiations with the understanding with the union that it would either be administrator or administrative coordinator, depending on what you guys did. But because last month you agreed with the concept of administrator, that's the proposal that we had with the union, that it would be administrator. It does not take effect until January.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we need approval of the minutes of the November 8th, 2016 monthly meeting and the 2017 county budget.
I'll make a motion with.
By Eckstein, second by
I'll second
Bernadette. And this is for both.
Right.
Are there any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we have some citizens who would like to do a public comment. The first one is Fred Cook, and he is from Pine Lake Road in Wild Rose.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. This is more of an informational type situation. This book was recently published by the Wisconsin Potato and Vegetable Growers Association. And as a person concerned with water in the county and in the state. Having read through this, there's a couple things that, let's say, have been stretched quite a bit or somewhat fictitious. So if at some time there's a presentation by somebody from the Potato and Vegetable Growers Association or the Farm Bureau or somebody like that, we'd like an opportunity to rebut whatever they say at that meeting. Would that be okay?
I think you have to go through committee first.
Understood.
The Land and Water Committee first, and then they will request to be put on the agenda, correct?
Nobody has been requested to be put on the agenda yet, but,
Okay.
No, but that's what I mean. If
I
he,
mean, the vegetable growers haven't
Yeah.
either.
right. Okay, but that's the way they would go, would be to go through committee, right? Okay.
Okay, so,
Oh, I'm sorry.
okay. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Francis. Francis? Oh. Francis Road.
So I came tonight to speak with you, also in an informational mode, and I think you've got the packets that I put together. The reason that I'm here is because I live at Pleasant Lake, and as you all know, there's been a few problems with water levels in our Waushara County lakes. And over in the ensuing legislative session that we expect to see in Madison, it's our understanding that there will be new groundwater legislation that will be brought. We don't know what that will look like yet, but from what we can tell, we should be watching and be concerned because it's going to impact our lakes here in Waushara County, our rivers, and our drinking water. So tonight I put together this packet of information to try to provide a little educational effort here on the part of the Central Sands Water Action Coalition that has many lakes and members in Waushara County. So the first piece is the work that was done for the Little Plover River by Wisconsin USGS. It reports, as is on the second page there on the flip side, that the Little Plover River is closely connected to groundwater systems, making it vulnerable to impacts from nearby pumping. And then there's some other points as well. But the first one is what really has something to do with Waushara County, that what they have figured out for Portage County is going to be true here as well. And one of the efforts that we're trying to make is that monies be put in the state budget that would enable this area of the state to be studied with the detail and expertise that Portage County is going to study. So I'm hoping that you might look favorably upon that idea. The second piece is just Pleasant Lake data. One of the things that has
Springs Lake, near Neshgoro. We're also very concerned about groundwater. We're concerned about groundwater, both quality and quantity. And I would just ask you that when you are considering groundwater issues, that you consider all those involved, whether it's agriculture or within municipality, a lake like we live on, or just recreational and tourism, and how important that is in Waushara County. And when viewpoints are being talked about, please consider all those viewpoints. Thanks very much.
Moving right along, we have no unfinished business. We have, under new business, the Highway Department annual report. Brian? You wish.
I'll make this very brief, but last year I showed you guys this. This is our annual report. This is from 2015. By statute, I'm required to make one of these. But just some of the highlights in there is the amount of dollars that we spent per highway inside the county. Then there is also different things about our equipment and our machinery, buildings, depreciation, all of that kind of stuff. So if it's a good read, if anybody wants to sit down and look at it sometime, I'll have our financial gals read it to you because I don't understand all of it myself. But a couple highlights. The only way that we can replace equipment is when our cost of our equipment, the revenue for that equipment exceeds the cost. In 2015, that equated to $270,000 worth. So not very much to go buy new equipment. But we do work for other governmental agencies. In 15, we did about $1.27 million worth of work, whether it would be working on squad cars, doing work for townships, things like that. And that also helps us bring our equipment hours up so our revenue exceeds our costs on our equipment. For instance, we did a bridge slope spraying job for the DOT this year. I don't know if you go underneath any viaducts where you see the slopes and they're black painted oil on them. Last year that truck and the year before that truck lost about $8,000 a year. This year that truck made $14,000 just because of the hours. That truck was on the road for 3 months straight with 2 guys in it. So that being said, last year we did quite a bit of work. We did 50 miles of chip sealing. That's the first time that we've hit 50 miles that a lot of people can remember. Ain't saying it's never been done in Waushara County, but it's number 2 in the state of Wisconsin. And we did it in 8 working days. So, needless to say, you have some employees that are pretty dedicated. We did some paving, County Trunk V from 4th Avenue to up to Hancock. Part of that was concrete underneath there, old Highway 51. Former administrations were afraid to go through certain construction processes. We decided to get it tackled, and we handled that in 16. And then we also did County Trunk F from Spring Lake to the county line, which was about almost 8 miles of paving.
Very nice.
Thank you, but once again, it's not me, it's them guys that are dedicated employees. Just for instance, this weekend, the guys on the state routes, on the state highway routes that do the plowing. Wisconsin is the only county, or the only state, that hires the counties to do their maintenance work. And you had employees working on state roads 14 hours a day. They work 36 hours Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning to make sure your roads were safe, your state highways were safe for you. That's dedication, 36 and a half hours in 3 days.
Brian's big whip.
What's that?
Your big whip.
No, my big whip. We did quite a bit of work for the townships. Every time that we do work for the townships, just remember, if we send an employee into a township, that wages of that man for that day gets charged to the township, so we can in turn take them wages and put them back into our roads. So by doing some work for other townships, that helps us. It benefits our bottom line. We've paved in Coloma, Watoma. We had to push some work back because we just couldn't get it done. We had so much. this year, we'll be looking at repaving Double G from County Trunk C up to V, which is just just outside of Hancock there. And then County Trunk V from Hancock over to O, which would be past B and then that little jog going back up to C, or up to O rather. So there's that. We already picked up 2 miles of paving in the townships. Well, it's actually 2 miles we couldn't get done last year. We did last year about $300,000 worth of extra work from the state. And the way the budget is going right now, even though there's no money in the majors, as you're listening to the media and you're listening to Walker that he's not going to raise any taxes, any gas tax or whatever, a lot of they're changing the stuff. So the big projects, they're actually putting more into maintenance. So we do their maintenance work for them. So you're going to see us get a little bit more work. Some of that work includes crack sealing and chip sealing Highway 152. There is shouldering all of Highway 22 throughout the whole county, so that's 36 miles of shouldering. Either side of the road, fellas. And then there's a couple other ones, and I don't recall what they all are. So even though they're talking about doing this a lot of more extra money for maintenance and they're talking about adding on to your GTA dollars, those in the townships, you guys already know, that dollar amount really isn't that much when it's all said and done, but it's an effort, I guess. I don't think that you're done seeing that argument in Madison. And as a matter of fact, it looks like to be about the top one for this coming budget session is transportation. So I guess if anybody's got any questions.
How are we doing on a mechanic?
Yeah, he's been there for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I'm sorry you missed the last meeting. Yeah, he's back. He's there. Yeah, we are staffed at 100% right now.
Never say that.
Right now, right this instance, as we speak.
Is that other project you're thinking, when are you gonna, I thought you said maybe 2 years to do, F from Spring Lake to 73.
Okay, the Spring Lake, the County Trunk F from 73 to Spring Lake is a STP project. And for those of you that don't know, that stands for Surface Transportation. And that is federal dollars. So there's a lot more hoops to jump through, and that has actually got a bid of in 18, in the spring of 18, with the construction work to be done in 18. And all that is basically putting about 2 inches of asphalt over the top of what's there now, not even pulverizing it. Dollar amount will be about the same dollar amount as what we did for the other piece going the other way. When these feds come down with all of these rules, it's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of extra money. And sometimes you got to wonder, even though it's 80% on the construction side, if it's worth the time to spend. For instance, Waukesha County did one. They did a rural section and they turned it into an urban section. So they went from ditches and 4-lane to a 4-lane with curb and gutter, and the county did 2 miles of it, and then they did 2 miles through the STP program. The dollar amounts, the cost per project, were exactly 50% higher, or 100% higher, going through the federal dollars, using the federal dollars. So,
80% generally?
and it's an 80% program. It's an 80-20 program.
Lose money on the deal?
Yes. Yes. But they do help on bridges. It does help on bridges, where we can't do the work ourselves. For those of you that don't know, Spores Bridge, Double X Bridge, just north of Berlin, is being rebuilt right now. Rehabilitated. If we would have waited another 20 years and let it not fall into the river, but get to a point where it needed to be completely reconstructed, the price of that project would have been about $5 million. Right now, when Tom and I first started, and when I say Tom and I, that's when I was over in Berlin and we were partnering with them, with West Sheriff County Highway. That project was slated to be right around $900,000. The bid letting in the spring was $2.1 million. So there was that much creep on a federally funded project in 9 years. So, any more questions?
Questions for Brian?
We could talk talk transportation all night. I'm sure everybody'd love to.
I love it. Hey, thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mayor Jerry Smart is going to give us his annual report.
I had to pick on him when he was injured.
Yes. And it was Deb that knocked him down.
Mark actually said it was because of what I said to him in the last, good evening. 2016 was a pretty normal year as far as consulting with different departments, the general public, that sort of thing, and I won't bore you with a lot of that. The big difference for last year, usually, or for this past year, usually what I do is somewhere between 50 and 100 corners per year, section corners. That's with checking the ties, being sure the monument's in good shape, and getting survey grade accurate coordinates on those. This year, because of the state had a strategic initiative grant, and one of the things that they had in there that you could use it for was for the public land survey system. So, and that was for $50,000. So we wrote that last year, or this year, to do more corners than we normally would. So I just finished those up and uploaded those to the state, actually this morning. And we did 135 this year, so we're a little bit above. We've already received half of that 25,000, and the rest of the 50, well, the next 25,000 should show up sometime in mid-January, probably, something like that. They're going to do that grant again for next year. Zach and I are working on that, probably try to get that out this week yet. We're going to do something very similar. We'll probably look at changing the cost of those. We had done those, quoted the state about $300 a corner. And in looking at this, we found that we were very much on the low end. For the surrounding area, central part of the state, the low end, we were pretty close to the low end. And the high end was Green Lake at $1,200 a corner. When I saw that, I thought about going back to private practice one day. So we're going to be doing the same thing again next year. When we do this, what you're paying for contract with me now covers the corners I do. So as we're doing it in-house, that $50,000 can then be used for different projects in the land records realm, so it doesn't, don't have to worry about writing another grant for it or maybe using tax dollars to do that, county tax dollars. Next year, along with that, this past year I actually finished all of the boundary between Marquette and Waushara. Actually, the boundary between Green Lake and Waushara as well. We did find that we've got 3 or 4 corners that we kind of got in dispute with Green Lake, but we're working that out now. Adams County, I've done about half of them, and they're going to do the rest here in the next year or two. Also, the biggest part of what we'll be doing next year is our boundary with Waupaca and Portage County. That line is actually what's called a correction line. So what happens is there's double corners there. There's a set of corners for the county to the south and another set of corners for the counties to the north. They're all in. The problem is they're tentatively supposed to be, or technically supposed to be, a straight line. They're not. So a couple of those that I knew were absolutely in error, I've fixed those in past years. But I have made contact with both counties, and we'll be looking at that a little closer in 17 to see just exactly what we're going to do with that. But I certainly will keep you up to date on that. I think both Donna and both vice chairs are sick to death of hearing about that North County line, but it'll take a while to get it worked out. But we've got a pretty good start, and hopefully 17 will help to finish that off. So. Anyone have any questions?
So that we had an agreement that way. They actually want that to show up on the appendix so that it's very clear that that's okay. So those really are the major changes. There's some, discussion about the shift. Another thing that we're going to do differently, this union has a 7K exemption. And what that means is that overtime doesn't kick in at exactly 40 hours a week. So we were at 160 hours in a 171-hour, or in a 28-day cycle. So now overtime doesn't kick in until 171 hours. So that is a significant change to the county, because their schedules, instead of being based on 160 hours every 28 days, will be at 168 hours in a 28 days. So overtime, we'll get a little break on the overtime side. And when we last met, the board had made a motion to go with the administrator, and so based on that motion, we had told the union that that the first time we met that was a possibility. The second time we met, you guys had already decided that, so that's why it reflects that change in the language. So that was just a housekeeping situation.
Pat?
Motion we approve. Second.
We have a motion by Pat, a second by Larry. Do we have any other questions or comments?
There's just a few spots on there where when you took something out, you left a comma in that shouldn't have been left in there and should have been pulled out. Just so you know.
We'll fix that in the
Okay.
main
Yeah,
contract.
I just wanted to let you know. I had Miss Melcher for an English teacher.
Good for her, yes.
Okay, any other questions? We need a roll call vote.
Yes, please.
All right, this time we're starting with Mr. Rothermel.
Aye.
Mark Kirschner.
Aye.
Mrs. Prince.
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Heisey.
Aye.
Mr. Tim.
Aye.
Mr. Kapp.
Aye.
Mr. Eckstein.
Aye.
Mr. Weddy.
Aye.
Mrs. Clada.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Aye.
Mr. Wadle.
Aye.
11 ayes.
Very good. Next, we'll do the 2017 EMS Employees Union Local 425 IAFF.
All right, so this was a very fast turnaround. We had met with this group on 2 different occasions, but we just settled with them right after Melanie had sent out the agenda, so that was what forced the amended agenda. The original one you received had the 3-hole punch, but I want you to refer to the one that does not have punches that was given to you. I had to get something ready fairly fast to give to Melanie in the afternoon, and so that didn't give the union time to look at it, but I told them they had to look at it by today. And so there's a couple very minor changes. If you look on page 3 under the Wisconsin Retirement System, they're just going to reference regular full-time. They took out some of those definitions, full-time relief. So a full-time is a full-time is a full-time. So we changed that language. The second thing is on the very last page, in that the union, we do have a side agreement with the union dealing with health insurance, and they asked that we reference that somewhere in the contract language after an appendix or in one of the articles. So I don't have any problem with that. A side agreement stays intact until you undo it. So other than that, the changes were basically that we took out all references to part-time in this contract. So this union will only recognize the full-time people. And so a lot of the language is pulling out the references to part-time. That's what a lot of this is. We had some side agreements in Article 11. We added that. It was a side agreement that we added shift lead positions, so now we're going to recognize that in the contract. Another major thing is, let's see, Another major thing is that we are actually going to give them more money in their clothing allowance. They were at 350, we're going up to 500. Brian did an analysis on the clothing requirement that we have for them and felt that 500 was a fair number. The other major thing is they wanted a 1-year agreement with a 1.5% wage adjustment effective January 8th of 2017. So those really are the major things, and it's a 1-year agreement.
Move adoption.
Are there any questions or comments?
Cap seconded it, right? Mike
Yes,
Cap.
my captain. All right, and we'll have a roll call vote. Did you have a question, Ms.?
Yes, 9.3B,
Yes.
missed one administrative coordinator in there. I thought maybe you were staying on for a little bit. but
You're very funny. I will make sure that gets changed.
I just want to make sure you got it.
Okay.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Mrs. Krantz. Yes. Mr. Heisey.
Yes.
Mr. Kim.
Yes.
Mr. Cap.
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein.
Aye.
Mr. Weddy.
Yes.
Mrs. Clun.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Wadle.
Yes.
Mr. Rothermel.
Yes.
We are down to the approval of the 2017 non-union wage scale.
All right, so this was also in your packet. This is just an excerpt from that whole wage scale. When we were asking for budget guidelines, we talked about adjusting the scale, the steps 1 through 6 at 1.5%, and then the maximum at 2%. We talked about that again in September. That is actually what was budgeted. But you have one last kick at this cat. So basically what we're talking about, and again, this is just an excerpt, the entire scale is about 12 pages long, so I didn't think you wanted the entire thing. So this is the top part is an existing one. The second part shows the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that would be adjusted by 1.5%. And then that merit range, that maximum would be adjusted by 2%. If you look below, we have the PEP for our exempt people, and so their wage actually gets reduced by 62 cents an hour, and that the value of that is put into a post-employment health plan. That was something that group voted on and decided a couple years ago already, Ruth. And so that, if you're wondering why the difference in wages, that's what it is. So the level J adjusted wage is our exempt people. So that hourly wage gets converted into a salaried amount. So that's basically what we're talking about. So we do have a few people that, because they've been grandfathered in, or they've been at a higher wage, if they're above that maximum scale, what we've done in the last few years is they get 1%. If they meet satisfaction in their job performance, they would get 1% adjustment. If they're in working through the steps, if they're meeting their expectations, they can go to the next step on an annual basis. But once they get into that merit range, then that's when the job evaluation piece really kicks in. If they're meeting expectations, they can get a 1.5%. If they're exceeding expectations, or there's a market reason why they need to get a little bit more, maybe it's within that group. Some are making more and some are making less, because we're still dealing with people that have been here for a long, long time. So basically, this is the scale. This is what we're asking, is that you approve that, the 1.5%. for steps 1 through 6, and then that maximum would be adjusted by 2% for 2017. This is just a 1-year plan.
Everett. Move to approve.
I'll second.
Dennis seconded. Do you have any other questions or comments? Pat?
So,
tier 2 example, and they, you think they deserve more than 1.5, they can move up a scale, is that what you're saying?
So while they're within that first 6 steps, if they're meeting expectations, they can actually move up to the next step. But the whole scale would be adjusted by a certain percent.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote.
Mrs. Krantz. Yes. Mr. Heisey.
Yes.
Mr. Kim.
Yes.
Mr. Pat. Mr. Eckstein.
Aye.
Mr. Weddy.
Yes.
Mrs. Plata.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Wadel.
Yes.
Mr. Rothermouth.
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
11 ayes.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have discussion possible motion action items. The approval of the 2017 personnel policy changes.
So last month, or maybe 2 months ago already, we started on that process. It's a 67-page document, so it's fairly lengthy. But after you had made the motion last month to go to administrator, I started reading through and trying to make those reference changes. And so instead of giving you 35 pages of this, what I did was just gave a synopsis to show you where those changes are from. And it's really, this part is just strictly, this first page is just strictly changing administrative coordinator reference to administrator. If you get into the main part of the document, the changes that are something different than administrative coordinator to administrator were highlighted to show you something that was a little more substantive in change. It's not just a reference change. So page 3, Dennis and Everett were having some conversation about that. So the department heads, basically the day-to-day chain of command is that the department heads that are not elected officials report to the administrator. The job description that you approved last month and are also attached to the resolution defines that. You had concerns that the controlling committees would not be involved, but it defines that the administrator will keep the controlling committees involved in hiring process. If there's disciplinary action, that, you know, it defines the parameters of that day-to-day operation. But in normal business, that person reports to the administrator. The next substantive change is on page 11, under the overtime. We had for comp time banks, we had Sheriff's Department was at 80, EMS was at 48, the non-union was at 40. We changed the union EMS folks, or they stayed at 48, but the WPPA, the Sheriff's Department, we got them to go back from 80 to 48. And so now to change the non-union to 48. So they're all at 48, so I can put it into the timekeeping system. If somebody goes over, it's going to flag it. It's going to tell the department head, hey, you can't do that. Because what I was finding is I could only put in one number, so I had to put in the 80. So other people were getting more than what they were supposed to get, and you know, if the department head wasn't watching that, they would just get more. So this cleans that up. So that's a change that we're going to make. Some of the on 39, 41, 42, these are just small changes in that. Data processing is more referred to as information systems now. Data processing really isn't data processing, it's part of administration. So it's just cleaning up some of that kind of stuff. That's 43 is like that, 44 is like that. Page 45, so people are supposed to be logging off their workstations at night and on weekends. They can't be putting unknown source documents onto the workstations. They can't upgrade software without getting permission from IT. So it's just those kind of cleanup things, and this is all part of our system at security. 68 68 is basically those kind of changes. 69 is a little more substantive in that we have folks that have smartphones. Most of us have smartphones, right? So you guys know what I'm talking about. But we had it in place that if they're on a county smartphone and if they log in, now we're going to require a PIN to log into the system. If they attempted to get in, it was 100 times. Our system won't recognize 100 times. It'll only recognize 16. So we had to change that. So we let people know that if they, goof off for 16 times, make a mistake, they're kicked out of the system. And then the other thing is that it used to be that if it was 30 minutes of inactivity, but now the system is 30 seconds. And I know that doesn't sound like very much, but that's how it is. So basically, it takes you out of our system if it's inactive for 30 seconds. So let's see, was there anything else? I think that was the major stuff. Most of the substantive changes you had approved last month. So it's just some cleanup language.
Motion to approve.
Mike, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, consideration and possible action on the following resolutions and ordinances.
Resolution number 30-12-16, resolution authorizing cancellation of outstanding checks, county treasurer.
I'll okay that. We can.
Moved by Bernadette, second by Jerry. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution number 31-12-16, resolution allowing participation in the Wisconsin County Fish and Game Project.
Motion by Mike, second by Everett. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Resolution number 32-12-16, a resolution repealing Resolution 35-1188 amended and creating the position of county administrator.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Dennis to approve, second by Mark Kirschner. Questions or comments? We'll have a roll call vote on this one.
Mr. Heisey,
Yes.
Mr. Tim,
Yes.
Mr. Cap,
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein,
Aye.
Mr. Weddy,
Yes.
Mrs. Plata,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Wadel,
Yes.
Mr. Rothermel,
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner,
Yes.
Mrs. Krantz. 11 ayes.
All right.
Resolution number 33-12-16, a resolution amending resolutions 72-1286, 1-13-87, 18-801, and 30-1102 regarding funding of victim witness coordinator.
Motion. Motion by Everett. Second. By Pat.
This is something that we work through with the budget process, so this resolution is just a cleanup to reflect what we did in the budget for 2017.
We have a motion and a second, and we will do a roll call vote.
Terry. Larry.
Larry.
Yep. Mr. Tim.
Yes.
Mr. Cap.
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein.
Aye.
Mr. Weddy.
Yes.
Mrs. Plata.
Aye.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Wadel.
Yes.
Mr. Rothermel.
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner.
Yes.
Mrs. Krantz. Yes. Mr. Heisey.
Yes.
Very good, thank you.
All right, resolution number 34-12-16, Resolution authorizing Department of Aging to hire a resource specialist and disability benefits specialist for the Aging and Disability Resource Center, ADRC.
Motion by Everett, second by Pat. Any questions or comments?
Do you have any questions at all? This was something that the ADRC Governing Board, I believe they call it, Bernadette, had approved to come out of the ADRC grant money.
We'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Cap?
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein?
Aye.
Mr. Weddy?
Yes.
Mrs. Plata?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Radel?
Yes.
Mr. Rothenbaum?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
Mrs. Krantz?
Aye.
Mr. Heisey?
Yes.
Mr. Tim?
Yes.
11 ayes. Ordinance number 605, ordinance amending Washera County zoning maps pursuant to the authority granted in Chapter 58 Washera County Code, zone change for Mark A. and Charissa A. Slife, Town of Richford.
Motion by Mark Kirschner, second by
To approve.
Bob Wade. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Ordinance number 606, ordinance amending Chapter 1, Section 1 through 12, paren H of the Washera County Code, citation enforcement procedure.
Motion by Bob Wade,
Motion approved.
second by Mike Cap. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now we have appointments to the Board of Health. Didn't we do this one?
I
Donna Goldsmith. Her term will last from January 1st, 2017 to December 31st, 2018. Beth Osika will have the same term, and Gilbert Stefanidis, MD, from All Rose, will have the same term as the other two.
Motion to approve the appointments.
Motion by Everett, I'm sorry, motion by Bennett, a second by Everett. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I hope some of you got a chance to go down to the Commission on Aging. I know Larry and Pat and I did. They do such a good job down at their cookie sale, and they had a little chili. You didn't get your chili, did you?
Oh, it was all gone when she got there. Was nothing left.
So much time talking to
You know what? If you would stay a little longer, they would open a jar for you.
Funny.
Of course, I'm kind of a baby.
That's funny.
And the other thing is, I have a friend who served on jury duty. And I got a call the other night, going on and on and on about what a great job our sheriff's department does. And I said, I know. But she wanted to thank the county board for giving them the equipment that they need to do the job that they do. And so I'm passing that on to you. And I also want to thank Bill and everybody for the recount. That was kind of a crazy thing, but she hung in there, and any calls, it said, really? So I guess it went okay. And the other thing is, the executive committee has asked Barry to go ahead and order the tablets, and we'll get those sometime after.
When is the training going to be on those?
As soon as we get them.
Bob, your training will be on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Yeah, I'll
The
probably
rest
need,
of us only have to come on Monday.
yeah, I'll probably need it.
Yes, Larry.
Why didn't the county board have to approve the tablets?
I was told that because the county board had, we did a vote, and what was it, 8 out of 10? No, 9 out of 10? Yeah, 10 out of 11 said yes, that we could go ahead and order them in the executive.
But it wasn't an official vote. That was just a survey.
But we ordered them. We voted and we ordered
Thursday, so we will have treats for him from 10 to 2. If you've had the opportunity to work with Mike, that's going to be his last day if you want to stop in and say goodbye. We'll have a resolution for you for next month to recognize his retirement from our organization. I'll miss him a lot. He's a really good worker, and been a lot of fun having him. So anyway, so
Funny is 'cause he has the great big smile.
he's got a big smile on his face.
Great.
Move to adjourn.